organising this event, and also to my good friend Nikhil Rathi for hosting us here this morning. And LOPA has touched on a wide range of topics, both an explanation of what Diversity UK does, and also, I think very importantly, the topic of women's entrepreneurship, which is very timely given that we have just yesterday celebrated 100 years of women's suffrage. So in my remarks today, I wanted to focus on the nexus of technology, innovation, and what this might herald for future business trends, and to draw out some of the public policy issues which are likely to arise for the economy and trade in the years to come. But before I do that, I wanted to make a few observations about the state of play of diversity and inclusion in Britain, and I hope, and Lopa made some very powerful points, and I hope some of what I'm going to say will demonstrate that there is a journey that has hopefully started to address those. And in many respects, we've had a remarkable month for the cause of diversity, some of it substantive, some of it more symbolic. We've seen the appointment of the first ethnic minority Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, the first person of colour to hold one of the four great offices of state, the royal wedding with a worldwide audience of 2 billion, and broke all traditions and norms, and we welcome somebody of mixed racial heritage into the royal family. I think a truly historic moment. And hot on the heels, just over the weekend, many of you will have seen the pictures of the Trooping of the Colour ceremony, where Charanpreet Singh Lal, a 22-year-old Sikh soldier from Leicester, who came to Britain as a baby from Punjab, now serving the Coldstream Guards, proudly wore a turban in a sea of bearskin hats. I mean, that was a wonderful image to see over the weekend. And also to mark the Queen's official birthday, we saw the publication of the traditional birthday honours list, which I'm pleased to say had 49% women and 10% from the BAME communities. And closer to here, in the City of London, Dame Helena Morrissey, who's actually played a very important role in ensuring that we have more representation of women on boards, and who's currently the head of personal investing at Legal and General Investment Management, last week launched the so-called Girl Fund, which will allocate more capital to companies that score well for gender diversity, not just at board level, but also executive management and workforce levels. And it's certainly a path-breaking initiative, and I think we will all follow that very closely. But I don't want to sound complacent either. There's still some way to go. With all the positive news flow, I think it's equally disappointing to see, for example, the recent data about the admission of black students to Oxbridge. I think LOPA highlighted a number of issues around public appointments, and indeed the representation of women at senior levels below the board. And I think those are areas certainly that we need to tackle systematically if we genuinely want to become the world's greatest meritocracy. We should, I think, recognise, however, that particularly the technology and financial services sectors have provided very powerful engines of social mobility, particularly those from migrant backgrounds. And I think we've been hearing a lot about this excellent publication, the Top 100 Asian Stars in UK Tech, which was launched last week. And I had the honour of being one of the judges for that. And I have to tell you, it was quite a difficult process to sift through all the nominees, and there were a multiple of nominees before you got onto the top 100. And I think such is the abundance of talent, particularly in this sector, and it clearly showcases the world-class diverse talent that we do have in the tech sector from the Asian communities. And during the launch event, Jacqueline Rojas, the president of Tech UK, spoke about gender equality and diversity more broadly. And I wanted to highlight 3 statistics that stuck in my memory before I move on to other topics. So the first one that she mentioned was having women on a board reduces the risk of bankruptcy by 20%. Second, teams rather than individuals make better decisions 66% of the time. I must say, I wish someone had told Donald Trump that during the G7. Third, inclusive teams, this is the most powerful, inclusive teams make better decisions 87% of the time. So, with a reminder about the power of diversity, let me make 3 much more broader points. The first topic I wanted to touch on is innovation. My own exposure to this area in a significant way came through serving as a trustee of an organization called the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts, now known as NESTA by its acronym, which is the UK's leading innovation foundation. And as the name suggests, one of its key insights is that innovation doesn't happen in silos, but instead where different disciplines and expertise come together. And a prime example of this currently is of this cross-disciplinary approach is blockchain and cryptocurrencies, which actually operate at the intersection of economics, cryptography, and computer science. But this type of innovation creates institutional challenges requiring new organizational approaches. And there are a couple of very good examples of these new approaches in the UK. The first one I'd cite is the Oxford Martin School, which brings more than 200 researchers from across multiple faculties at Oxford to work collaboratively on some of the pressing thematic challenges. And another more recent example is the Francis Crick Institute in Euston. I don't know how many of you in this audience have heard of the Francis Crick Institute. So maybe just under half. So the other half I would go and sort of research this, because it's now Europe's single largest biomedical center, where even the building has been designed to encourage interaction between scientists working in different fields. And when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was here recently, he visited the center and was able to see the work firsthand. So the competitive advantage which comes from creativity is not something linear, but something that requires careful nurturing. And it certainly persuaded me that innovation doesn't necessarily come from focusing strictly and relentlessly on the left brain STEM subjects, but also requires other right brain sparks of creativity. And some call this STEAM, where the A stands for arts, and it's a theme which I believe we're going to see a lot more going forward. And in fact, I'm aware of a particular initiative that you are going to see in the next 10 days. So keep reading the London Evening Standard. That's where you'll see it first. The second area I wanted to highlight is the importance of scale-up. It's something which I also trace back to my involvement as a trustee of Nesta, where we commissioned a seminal piece of research called the Vital 6%. And the key finding of that report was that 6% of the fastest growing companies generated half of all new jobs. And it's like a sort of a super Pareto principle with important implications for public policy. And moreover, these companies and businesses had one common factor: they're more likely to be innovative, which was a source of their growth. So if a small minority of high growth and even innovative businesses hold the job to job creation and prosperity, you can see that it suggests that policymakers can then be highly targeted in their interventions to achieve maximum impact. And one of my fellow trustees at Nesta, Sherry Kotu, who was incidentally also, I think, I don't know if still is, but certainly has been a non-executive director of the London Stock Exchange, has led some pioneering work published as the Scale-Up Report in 2014, which some of you may be familiar with, and in turn has led to the creation of the Scale-Up Institute. And the Scale-Up findings are actually quite revealing, because they show that the so-called gazelles face the most difficulties in finding the right talent, in building their leadership capacity, and in accessing customers, all ahead of raising finance, which was not actually the biggest constraint. So at the beginning of London Tech Week, we should certainly, I think, celebrate the vibrant startup ecosystem that we now have. Lopa highlighted 5.5 million SME businesses. We have a startup rate of 11,000 per week in this country, which is phenomenal. And also, we have attracted 5 billion of venture capital funding over the last couple of years, which is more than Berlin, Paris, and Stockholm combined. But it's clear that we have to have a focus on company growth as well as company creation. And as well, and on top of that, the talent which comes into scale up. It's therefore, I think, great to see data published this morning that the UK is now home to 13 of Europe's 34 unicorns, each valued at over $1 billion, so about 40% of the total. And indeed, we have a further 51 potential unicorns in this country, valued at between 250 million and $1 billion. So I'm sure, Nikhil, you'll have your business development team straight after them if you haven't already, because they're clearly prime IPO candidates. And this leads me to my third and final point about future business trends and trade. As many of you know, services account for 80% of UK GDP. And in fact, we have the highest services trade to GDP ratio of the G7. So all the drama about steel and aluminium tariffs, while it's clearly important, is largely missing the point, I think. Recent trade statistics have shown that our international trade in digital services has been growing at over 20% and now worth over 39 billion. And it could be even higher given the challenges of accurately recording dematerialized trade flows. So whilst minimizing the friction for trade in goods is certainly necessary, the future of trade will be more and more about managing trade barriers that have nothing to do with physical borders or conventional customs processes. And overall, I think the most transformative impact of technology and innovation is on productivity. And whilst we can get absorbed with chasing the new thing, whether it's sort of virtual reality versus augmented reality, or I was reading recently the 4 types of different artificial intelligence, from reactive machines through to the dream, maybe the nightmare of self-awareness amongst machines. But ultimately, I think we should actually focus on the key disruptive and economic effects. And the 2 meta effects which I find the most interesting, and which are at the heart of so many new business models, are firstly the capacity and cost to process complex data and information, and second, the network effects of connecting ever larger groups. It means that you can have everything as a service in the broadest sense of the word and of the meaning of that, and benefit from the capital efficiency of fractional ownership models and the ease of tracking and authentication that comes from blockchain. So if you thought Airbnb was disruptive, then think about hotel rooms booked by the hour and even the minute, which is now completely feasible and being implemented as I speak. And in fact, there's a trial going on in San Francisco right now with a whole bunch of major hotel chains on exactly this. And you can certainly apply the same principles to cars, jets, yachts, offices, meeting rooms, and even owning a racehorse. And elsewhere, I think the impact of these meta effects combined with open banking, for example, could make the chore of managing household finances a thing of the past, as you automatically switch to the best energy tariff, household insurance, or broadband subscription. So none of this is blue sky. It either exists or is around the corner. And it's scratching the surface of what might be possible. So it hopefully provides a sense of perspective. If you are a little anxious about the current state of affairs, whether it's Brexit or Trump or the breakdown of the international rules-based order, I would urge you to look at these possibilities and look beyond those anxieties to embrace this whole era of new developments, the exciting wave of technology and innovation that is opening up. And from an economic perspective, I would argue that these trends will have a much more enduring impact than anything else that you might be worried about right now. And so there could not be a better time to take stock of these possibilities than during London Tech Week, where I think London firmly remains Europe's tech capital. And so I'd like to congratulate Diversity UK and the entire team for opening our eyes to this brave new world with this event at the London Stock Exchange this morning, and to thank you for the opportunity for sharing some of these thoughts, and I hope it will provoke some thoughts and actions on your part. So thank you very much.